Hey y'all, welcome to Raider Dog Ranch. Today we're going to be replacing the CV axle on the passenger side of this 1998 Honda Prelude. Okay, we got the wheel off, and the CV axle is back. I don't know if you can see it. It's this thing right here. It basically connects from the center of your hub here into your transmission on a front wheel drive car. So if you can see back in there, yeah, that's a good shot of it there. That's the CV axle. And we're going to have to take off a few parts to get to it. We'll go through those. In order to get to the CV joint, we're going to have to take off the brake caliper, the ball joint up here, the upper ball joint, the lower control arm ball joint down here, and the tie rod. Once all those are taken out, this entire thing will be able to pull out of the way where we can pull the CV joint out. So underneath this, on the tie rod end, there's a cotter pin that I've already bent. You take that out, and I've already loosened this up. This castle nut comes off the bottom, and then either you need a tie rod removal tool to get this out, or you can try a trick to hit it right here on this tapered part. Hit it right here with a hammer, and a lot of times that'll unseat it. Just like that. Now we're going to come over and take off this brake line support that bolts underneath here, and we need that because we need this all to get out of the way. Okay, now we've already taken this bolt out. Now this can stay out of the way. The next thing we're going to need to do is remove this brake caliper. So there's two bolts in the back. One's high, one's low. We'll take those off and then take the caliper off. Then we'll pull the caliper off and set it aside. Make sure you don't put stress on the brake cable that it's still hanging from. Next thing we'll do is take off this bolt here, which connects to this strut arm, which goes up to the coilover. So let's get that off. I don't remember if I've mentioned this, but virtually every bolt so far has been a 17 millimeter, except for I think the brake line holder, and that was a 12 millimeter, so they're mostly 17s. The next thing we're going to do is remove this big nut here that's holding on the axle, and that is a 36 millimeter bolt, so most of us don't have those. You will have to pick that up or rent it. Sometimes you'll see this was done a little bit. See that pin was knocked in right there? What's supposed to happen is when after you put this nut on, you should hammer down into this pin. We'll show that when we get done. But this one was turned a little bit. It was off center of that, so it was not in a good position, in a position where it was holding it in place. The next thing we're going to do is remove this bottom nut and pop that ball pin out. As soon as I say they're all 17s, I run into a 19. So this one is a 19 millimeter. Now we should be able to just move that. Everything's loose now, so this should move up. Can't get him all the way up out of the ball joint. There we go. Put it on that side so you can see. So there's the axle. We will, of course, this is still in the way. We'll have to move that, but then he'll pull right out. Okay, I won't be able to show you this working with two hands, but this is where the CV axle mates to the transmission. I'm going to use a pry bar to separate that out a little bit, and then the rest of it should just slide right out. That wasn't too hard. You can see that's separated out now, and I forgot to put something under it so that I don't drip onto the ground. So there's the old one on the left, new one on the right. You can see it is the same part. Should have checked that before we started, huh? Okay, we've got the new CV axle in. Can't see it very well, but let's see if I can get around all this. Made it up to the transmission. You just slam it a couple of times, the gears will line up and drop into place. At least that's my experience. So now we'll start reassembly. First thing we'll do is get the axle back into the rotor and start buttoning it up with that bottom ball joint. Okay, we've got our ball joint stub back in the lower control arm, and we'll throw the nut on there and torque it down to 43 pounds and put the cotter pin. Next, we're going to line up the holes for the wishbone here. Lines up on both sides. We're going to take the bolt that goes back in there, and we got a little bit of red thread lock on there, and we're going to put that through and tighten it up. Okay, I've already got that snugged up, and now we're going to tighten that down to 119 foot-pounds, 17 millimeter. Now we're going to put the brake caliper back on, back here. We're going to put the two bolts in the back, and then we'll tighten those down to 80 foot-pounds. Now we're going to reattach the flex hose. Now we're going to reattach the tie rod. And we're going to torque this to 33 foot-pounds. And if our cotter pins are lined up, we'll put it in. Looks like it's not. Now finally we're going to put on the axle nut. We'll seat it down, and this is going to be torqued to 180 pounds. Because this is going to spin when I try to tighten this, we're going to put a pry bar in between. Try to make sure you don't damage your lug nuts or your lug studs. 180 pounds is a lot of pressure. Because I've got a jump on it like that, and that's really not how you're supposed to do a sensitive thing like a torque wrench, I'm going to take a breaker bar that's longer and just put a little pressure on it to make sure it got tight enough. Yeah, I can't move that, so that's good. This little tab here, maybe you can see a little notch, is open for a reason. There's not a key that goes in there. It's designed so that you can hammer down this little lip of this nut into that, so it acts as a lock washer of sorts. So I'm just going to take a punch and I'm going to knock in that lip. And that's it. So we've got this CV completely replaced. All the bolts covered up. All I got to do is throw the wheel back on it and take it for a test drive. Always make sure you're very careful if you do your own repairs. When you go for test drives, make sure you turn your radio off. Have your windows rolled down. Listen for any noises. Go slow at first. Make sure your brakes still work. Make sure you're taking very good precautions if you're doing your own repairs. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.